On PM Express tonight, power outages unearthing the truth. There's some controversy brewing on the back of a press conference that was done earlier this week to tell us and give us an update, to inform us about the power situation. I'm sure you've experienced some outages in the last few weeks. We got some clarity from the Energy Ministry today, and it revolves around this question. Are we really back to the dreaded days of doomsday? This word has become a very controversial one in our body politic. It has even found its way into dictionaries, online dictionaries. It's even possibly going to find its way into one of the most respected dictionaries in the world. But it's a subject of some considerable controversy, reason that we'll be interrogating what really is happening with the power sector tonight. And let's look at the sequence of events. We saw some parts of the country experience blackouts over the last few days. We saw Kumasi had that, and then complaints started. Particularly, we saw a lot of this on social media. People were talking. Then the Energy Minister says the situation is now not as bad as what Ghanaians experienced under the past administration. He held a press conference to tell us this, but also give us the reasons why we've had the challenges. And he says what we are experiencing is not as bad as the doom cry, and he introduced that word. I'm pretty sure one of these days that word might become as famous and popular as doomsday, might find its way into the dictionaries as well. If you go to Wikipedia, Google doomsday, you'll find definitions of doomsday. The Energy Minister introduced another word to this conversation, another lexicon in this whole controversy, doom cry. He says what we are seeing currently is simply intermittent outages. That is subject to some controversy. This is what generated the controversy. And as you've seen today, just today, the minority in Parliament says the Energy Minister had admitted that we are back to the dreaded days of doomsday. Now, that is one of those allegations that the Minister did not take kindly to. And where did they say this? It was on the floor of Parliament. And this was just today. So the Energy Minister today decided, after somebody, I'm sure, had alerted him that this allegation had been made on the floor, stormed Parliament House, and under the parliamentary rules, if you're a minister of state, you are allowed to come to Parliament, take a seat, and contribute. The only thing you can't do is vote when there's a vote. He took advantage of those rights and went to Parliament to clarify the real issue. So what is the electricity supply reality in your neighborhood? Right? I want to hear from you on this tonight, because we really need to answer the question. The opposition says there's doomsday, that the minister had admitted to it. The minister says, I did not say anything of that nature. And I'm talking about technical challenges that you'll be experiencing in your neighborhood. So I want to hear from you tonight. What is the latest update also on the power situation? My guest has the answers. Exclusive conversation coming up here on PM Express. Stay with us. My guest tonight on PM Express is the Energy Minister, John Peter Amewu. Thank you very much, Honorable, for your time here on PM Express.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're the man of the hour. A lot has been happening over the last few weeks in your sector. Let's start with today's controversy. In Parliament today, the deputy ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee alleged that you had admitted in your Monday press conference that we are back to the days of doomsday. And you did something, and you see the clip there on your screen. You did something that we haven't seen in the parliamentary history for a while. Somebody called you and told you this, I'm assuming, that this allegation had been made against you, correct?
Precisely. Yeah.
Okay. And so you decided to take advantage of parliamentary rules and go there and correct it.
Precisely.
Why was that so important?
It was very important because Parliament is considered as the fundamental beacon of our democracy. It's also a house that portrays the governance of this country. And so when there's going to be any misleading activities generating from the House of Good Governance, then it portrayed the country to a status that may not give a right impressions of the members of parliament, excuse me to use that word. And so it is expected that as parliamentarians, you know, or members that go to that house should say things that are factual. And so when this issue came out, that the minister admitted that there's doomsday, or we've returned to the era of doomsday, number one, I saw it as misleading not only to the House, but to the Ghanaian public. Unfortunately, the gentleman who came out with a statement.
In fact, happens to be a lady. So this is the
the
Lasoa.
Yes, okay, sorry. Was reading from the captions of the press statement.
Okay.
Normally, you know, the media, the press are best in putting out captions that do not actually reflect, you know, the details.
Okay, so quoting a headline.
If you just quote the headlines without reading what the actual facts are, you might be misleading the public. And so I went there to correct that impression. It was during the question time. And then one of the media asked this question, that are we back? Are we experiencing that going to experience the prolonged doomsday, you know? And I said, no, we are not back to that era of prolonged doomcry. But what we may witness as technical difficulties and challenges, maybe intermittent shortfalls. And these are solely technicals. I went further to explain. For instance, if there's a technical problem with a transformer within an area of distribution, that area for maybe 30 or 1 hour may experience, you know, some shortfall in terms of power supply. But for what we have witnessed in the past, a period of 3 years when this country was sitting down, areas being denied of power supply, where there was a systematic effort by the distribution, supply, and metering company to lay down procedures and areas that will receive power, and those that will not receive, we are not in that regime. That was what I explained, and that was totally what the press conference was about. To explain also further what led to that 1 week problem that we have experienced, you know, those intermittent power supply during the period. So I took advantage, as you rightly say, just to correct that impression.
Okay.
And I'm, of course, very happy the speaker granted me the opportunity to speak.
If you haven't, let's play back what the minister said, really, at the press conference on Monday. Let's hear him in his own words.
Anyway, it's very important that Ghanaians must realize that 1 week of power interruptions has drawn so much attention. For us as government, we extremely welcome, you know, Ghanaians' stance on this particular issue. For 3 years, now we know 1 year, 1 week is very key. So it gives us, you know, as people you put in to manage your resources, it puts us in a position to be very alert. And that is why we gathered here 1 week. For 2 years, this country has been off. I mean, so it's good, but I can show you that under His Excellency, we want things like this where we want to interact with the public and tell them exactly what is happening. Okay, and that is why we are speaking. We want to give you the assurance that we will continue to engage you and let you know what is happening in the system from now onwards.
Honourable Minister, would it be fair for me to say doomsday is back?
Well, when you put off the lights, you say doomsday, isn't it? In the past 3 years, it was doomcry. We are not in an era of doomcry. Okay, the lights may go off as we are witnessing, you know, but I can assure you that long period that we envisage, that our opponent thinks that they want to capitalize on, that period will never come because we are managing the system.
So, Mr. Amewu, there's something you said there that some are picked on. You said the lights may go off as we are witnessing. That in itself, some point to, is not acceptable.
Yeah, the lights going off as we're witnessing now, intermittent. It was not a plan process. You know, it's unforeseen contingencies that occurred, and that triggered the occurrence of that. That was temporal. Cumulative hours within the period do not even run to 100 hours. I was told it's about 38 hours cumulatively. Okay, because this was intermittent. 2 hours here, 1 hour, 30 minutes there. It was not planned. A planned, continuous, persistent system of outage was what we experienced in the past. And so I was trying to link, you know, the two scenarios, what we have seen in the previous week to the persistent 3 years period that this country sat down without, you know, light. That was exactly what it is. So I am not admitting at all that there is, of course, if there is a doomsday, Ghanaians should be able to say that we are witnessing.
So we are not back to doomsday.
We are not back to that prolonged system of cutting off power from this country.
Okay.
Power in terms of supply, distribution lines may sometimes triggered off. You may have 30 minutes, 1 hour in certain places. But the planned system where a government will not be able to supply sufficient quantity of power to this country. Today, as I speak, we're doing about 2,336 megawatts as of this night.
As of tonight?
As of tonight.
2,600 and...
2,000, will be about 2,340.
That is the consumption level?
Yes, that is what the
peak demand.
Peak demand. Peak demand. You know, the normal days periods, we are far less than that.
And how much do we have available to serve this demand?
The availability in terms of capacity availability is quite expensive.
Significantly more than this.
I can check and give you the figure. So it's far more than this.
So 2,600 plus megawatts. That's what we are demanding. That's a demand currently.
Today's peak demand has been dispatched, as I can see, on the dispatch notice, is about 2,336.
Okay.
That is at peak. From now, we start enjoying the peak. As and when, you know, it moves beyond, we may dispatch more plants.
Okay.
Car power, for instance, can do 450, but it's doing less than 450. It's doing about 400. Okay. Asogli is doing about 94 as at today. Okay. Akosumbo can do can go as much as 900. Akosumbo is doing about 700 now. So there's still a lot more room to expand if demand increases. Supply.
So what you're saying is that we are meeting this demand, all of this demand currently.
We are meeting demand currently. I can read out. Let me
Please do, because the reason why this is important is if you're home tonight and you may be off or may not be off, you want to hear the update. If you're a business, so you can plan. And so we need to hear what the latest is as far as the power situation is tonight, going into tomorrow, so people can plan with that as well. And that's
Let me just give you what we're doing now. Currently, Bui is doing 389 megawatts. It can go more than 400, but so it means there's more room there. Tico is doing 205. You know, with 7 quite close, about 50 there again, which can be done. Asogli is doing 93. Asogli can do as far as 400. Okay, so but we're doing so
93. These plants are performing lower than their full maximum capacity.
Before I left my office, car power was doing about 360. Now it has moved to 400 megawatts. Car power can go as high as 450 megawatts. Amewu is doing 192. Amewu is more than 200. It means there's excess. Now, if you go to VRA's own plant, number one, Akosombo today is now, as we speak, is doing 760.
But can do
900. When we were experiencing the difficulty, Akosombo was being deployed at almost about 890, now almost 900. More generation is about 104. There's more excess there. TAPCO is doing 102. So we have sufficient available capacity as of today to meet demand based on the need from demand.
Okay, so but you said when you were explaining the challenges that we experience, so categorically you're saying as of tonight nobody should be off.
Nobody should be off on the basis that a plant is not available.
Okay.
People may be off on the basis that they are technical faults intermittently, which may happen if a transmitter triggers off or if there's a problem within an area. We may expect some pockets of those things across some areas of this country, which I'll not be able to tell. For instance, in my hometown, if there's a problem with a transformer, of course, you should expect people within the whole environs, to be cut off shortly. But this shortfalls in terms of intermittent cutoff are not as a result of or non-availability of generations to meet them. We have sufficient generations to meet demand. So when the power it's harvested to the grid, transmitted and distributed along that portion, if there's a distribution problem, it has nothing to do with generation and transmission problems. Okay. That is the point we're trying to address. The problem we have experienced during His Excellency John Mahamed's time was not at the burner tip. It was a generation transmission problem because the power was not even there to be harvested. And that was why we have the prolonged period of non-availability of supply when demand calls for supply. At this point, we don't have the power even to harvest.
But you are only able to say with confidence that we have enough power generation capacity in the system, even if this 2,600 increases tonight, you can meet that because a lot of the plants you mentioned are not even performing close to their maximum yet, only because of the foresight of John Dramani Mahama, because he left you a very solid energy sector that was building capacity. And there's the only reason why tonight you are confident to say as energy minister that there is enough generation in the system. You don't expect people to be on.
No, our pre-election criticism was the fact that generation capacity was very sufficient. But you see, if you have a generation capacity, you need a feed to drive the generation.
So the feed is
could be fuel or gas.
And you said they didn't have the financial challenges.
They don't have the financial, model. They don't have the financial technology to address the problem. They could not procure crude oil. They could not make arrangements for gas supply. And that was the major problem that we have experienced during that time. The generators were there. Well, we have a lot of generators that were available to deploy power, but there were no financial capability. But and that is why we stated categorically.
You are having financial challenges today too, are you not?
Yes, we have financial challenges, which of course as must admit, but we are addressing them. They have financial challenges, but they've not been able to address them.
But part of the problem, you've admitted you have financial challenges.
Yeah.
What is the nature of the financial challenges you have?
No, basically, the energy sector has accumulated a lot of legacy debts over the period, which you know. The debt burdens on the agencies are very, very huge. I can just go through some of
them. Let's do that because we need clarity on this. And we'll be interrogating the numbers because the numbers go to the heart of the problem.
For instance, the entities to be paid, okay? The entities to be paid currently, Greco, for instance, that's up to September 18. We have about 132 million. Okay. Asogli, 122 million. Senate 86 million, Bui 209, Ghana Gas about 430, BOS 217, and all these are in million. GMPC 255, other power producers combined together, 244, VRA, so, and these are the entities to be paid. The entities in debt, okay, government of Ghana 1.2 billion.
So government of Ghana owes who 1.2 billion?
Government of Ghana owns, for instance, if you do the metrics well, you realize that most of the debt being owned, which government of Ghana needs to be paid, debts need to be paid to ECG.
ECG. So you owe ECG a billion plus.
About that, because government of Ghana
it's a major consumer
of electricity.
So you have not paid your bills?
Yes, of course. We have not paid the bills, government of Ghana. And these are legacy debts. These are debts that keeps on mounting.
Including what you've also consumed.
Precisely.
Okay. Over the last 2 years.
Precisely. And again, some of these debts are also as a result of, some power not being consumed but ought to be paid for, which I will explain later on in terms of the capacity charges that we paid. ECG about 1.1, 2. So you can see clearly here the difference between the ECG debt and what the GOG, needs to pay. So these are the accumulation almost in the range of...
Thermal Oil Refinery owes how much?
Thermal Oil Refinery is an entity in debt which owes about 291.
You mentioned the ECG, the VR, the Greco, etc. What you mentioned figures that what are these figures? Explain to me. What is it?
They are in millions. All these figures I'm talking about.
They owe somebody or somebody owes them.
They are the entities in debt.
Okay, they are in debt. Yes. They are in debt to that tune.
To that tune.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones I mentioned.
So they are indebted to who?
They are indebted to the entities need to be paid.
Okay.
Okay, so the entities need to be paid, that those are enumerated earlier, and these are the entities in them.
Okay.
So, but what happened is that it's very tricky. You realize that if we do the metrics very carefully, some of the debts will cancel out each other. And so what finance is trying to do now is to engage a very professional body to do, the reconciliation, the debt reconciliation.
So you want to reconcile the debts?
Because finance each day and then keeps on paying, for instance, fuel supply. Okay, finance paid some of the ECG debts directly by paying some of the power generators. And so those debts being paid by finance, of course, should come to cancel the government indebtedness to ECG. And so as and when the reconciliation is completed, we will know the exact positions of what the net balances are. These are just the gross position across.
But the figures you've just put out are scary. The reason why you say your previous government struggled to buy fuel, and I put it to you, is a reason why people are skeptical that you're telling us the truth. That if this is sitting on the books, these huge debts, you cannot be in a sound financial position to carry the burden of the fuel cost going into the future.
These are the challenges that have been faced by the previous government, which you
are also currently battling with.
Currently battling with. I must agree with you. But we are finding ways around it. If what we have faced within this period of 2 years, sustainable power supply, you would have told me if that had been under the previous government, we would not have any power. The generators will be there. They will not have fuel to supply with.
Is it true?
There are options going forward to make sure that some of these heavy fuel, we should be able to do away with them. The heavy fuels are quite expensive. If we migrate from the heavy fuel to gas, for instance, we are saving almost, about 1/7 of that cost. So we need to move away from the heavy fuel as much as possible. Gradually, VRA had managed to move away from, the light crude oil. Okay, and some of the plants are now filling on heavy fuel. So if we're moving from light crude oil to heavy fuel, and we move from heavy fuel finally to gas, we will expect going forward that the debt position would gradually begin to reduce.
Would you though concede that the kind of debt you've just, and amount of money you mentioned, will make it difficult going forward to sustain all the management you've done over the last 2 years in terms of the ability to buy crude, buy fuel, to power the plants going forward? Because these are huge, you need to pay them.
Yes, precisely, and that is why you need to do a lot of management to make sure.
But what you do, is it sustainable?
Of course, we try to minimize the power theft, we try to minimize the distribution, transmission losses, because all this, again, turns out to be social cost, which we pay. Power generated, not consumed, loss along the value chain, of course, need to be paid for. This all will add up to this debt position. And so going forward, we are doing a lot of investment on transmission lines, because most of these conventional systems have not been changed for far too long.
Okay.
So there's a lot of upgrade. ECG currently have a system they call intensifications, which means they're trying to upgrade some of the system, trying to, change some of the lines, do more distributions to some of the areas, because areas also need demand. There's also a need for demand to meet our supply. Since you have excess supply, you need to do more intensification in terms of demand, for demand to come up and meet the need of supply.
Do you not owe WAPCO and the Nigerian Gas Company that we rely on?
There's a legacy debt we owe Nigerian
legacy
company.
debt, I heard that, but currently in the last 2 years, you've also accumulated debt.
Currently, I can tell you confidently that VRA, it's paying any time they receive gas from Nigeria.
So in the last 2 years, you haven't accumulated debt to WAPCO and Nigeria Gas?
It has been paid.
All of your debts in the last 2 years have been paid?
There's still some legacy debt.
I get the legacy. I'm talking about
the current position.
Because you are currently
for
here
instance,
with me. I'm asking you about your own indebtedness to these two companies.
With paid.
So
the
NPP administration does not owe WAPCO and Nigerian Gas.
It is not an NPP administration. It's Ghana.
I get the legacy.
I just want to disaggregate.
I don't want to disaggregate the numbers.
There's a debt being accumulated by the previous government that we, as a government, being confronted with.
Okay.
We need to clear that debt. We will not say because we are NPP government.
I understand
because that debt position can affect the generation.
True. So currently, what you're saying is we owe WAPCO and Nigeria Gas.
The current situation is anytime VRA demand for gas from Nigeria, they pay out for.
You have never defaulted in that.
They have never defaulted. Today I invited them today to my office, and they were confirming.
And they showed you the books.
They didn't show me the book,
but you believe what they told you.
I believe what I've been told.
Okay. So the debt we owe, but you still owe WAPCO, but that's its legacy, you're saying?
Yes, of course, we still owe
WAPCO and Nigeria Gas. You still owe them.
Yeah.
But that is not debt that you have accumulated in the last 2 years. It's debt that existed before 2017.
Precisely.
That's what you believe. You say that with authority.
Don't forget that part of the ESLA and then the energy bond also went through a VRA, and some of that was also used to pay some of the debts. Okay, and so those debts are part of the legacy debt that were cleared. So VRA cleared some of the debts, even those existing debts. I'm not saying the debt as we come to meet is still what is there.
You've cleared some because of the ESLA bond, etc.
Precisely. And so if you look at the VRA position, for instance, in December 2017, entities in debt, VRA was in debt about 356 million. In December 2016, VRA was in debt 677 million. In December 17, it moved down to 356 million. In September 2018, you can see VRA has no debt. Okay, so some of the debt in terms of the legacy debt had been cleared, but there are still a chunk of legacy debt that need to be cleared.
Okay.
But what VRA does now going forward is that take the gas, you pay for it, otherwise they cut you off. And VRA keeps on paying those supplies that are coming to VRA.
So there's a question that the minority have asked in the last few days, that how much capacity have you added since you came? All the fantastic capacity that your mama left you, they say. You haven't added anything in the last 2 years.
Capacity in terms of what?
In generation, in megawatts.
No, we have not added any generation capacity within 2 years.
Okay.
Don't forget.
So you're relying on the John Mahama capacity, the John Mahama megawatts.
There were a lot of existing megawatts. They have signed almost about 23 PPAs, which is uncalled for. Those PPAs, it's not a matter of signing PPAs. Yeah. Everybody can come. Within a period of 2 years, we have not signed one single PPAs because we actually doing a power planning system. It is not a matter of just signing PPAs and ask them to.
But in terms of megawatts that we are using to run this country, it's all John Mahama megawatts.
Please get this right. In the power sector, it is not the generation. It is not establishment of generation. Even most of the generation went through negotiation without competition. So we can ask today several power plants to be constructed. Today, thousands of people walk to my office asking to build power plants. As a government, we can give them PPA and
So PCO. If it's your generation, what is it?
It has to do with the feed. And also have
the
to
fuel
do
to
the
power
fuel
it.
to power it. Because if you have a lot of generators already, why do you keep on building more power plants? You only build more power plants based on demand. Our growth, GDP, about 6% over the period, translating to a power demand of about 12.5% growth. In Israel term, 250 megawatts. So it means every year you need to add 250 megawatts. It takes about 3 years to build a power plant. And so if you're going to add 250 megawatts, you need to start 3 years before that. But if you do the 350 megawatts before demand grows up, it means at that point in time, when you have not even started consumption of that supply, you will be paying for capacity charges. And these are the problems we're saying, that they have not planned a system. They need to call for supply as and when demand is about, ready for that supply.
So you plan.
Taking into consideration your reserve margin that, of course, is necessary, 12, 10% or whatever you think you need to do. And these things have not been done. Building power plant, it's okay, but it's not a solution to address the demand. The solution to address demand is to make sure the availability of what you need to feed that power plant. And we are saying that before those number of power plants have been built, there was excess capacity already. There was so sufficient capacity that needs to be fed with the necessary feed.
So are you saying that all the megawatts they added were not really necessary? They should have just powered the ones they already had.
They've added too many megawatts at the same time, which of course
you have a glut of megawatts.
Yes, of course.
That you don't need.
We don't need. They said look at this report being done. We said that to avoid paying such a huge capacity charges for surplus idle capacity, it required that some PPAs be terminated and others modified, deferred, for another period. And this exercise was done to make sure that some of the PPAs, if they had been in power, about 3-4 PPAs would have already been completed this year. But what did we do? We said, no, you need to defer this PPA. So we have deferred some of them. That needs to come about 2025, 2030, 2026. So those that we're not going to terminate, because we weigh the cost of terminations, against deferment. What we decide to do is to defer some of them. But we are terminating as many as 11 PPAs. Once we terminate such a huge
PPA argument, but I'm talking about the actual megawatts they built and left. Are you saying that a lot of the megawatts they built and left was surplus requirements, that you didn't need them and they did build them?
I think that they've added too many. That is the point I'm raising.
But isn't that why you're confident that even if the country needs more than 2,600 plus megawatts as of tonight, you have enough capacity to meet because of that?
No, it is this capacity is an available capacity. It's not a generation capacity that I'm talking about. The installed capacity is different from the available capacity. Available capacity.
So you're talking about the installed capacity was too much.
Was too much.
Okay.
That is the point we're raising.
Let's drill down to some of the specifics which has led to some of the power outages, and based on some of the explanation you're giving on Monday. One of the key things you said was that the reverse flow was an issue, and you've done a bypass now, and that in negotiation of the tariff had delayed a bit, and that was a problem. That has been a problem why we were where we were. And in fact, you said tonight, just to add to that, that is a lot of the challenges we had because of the power crisis was due to unforeseen conditions. But that particular one, though, about the reverse flow, which is to bring gas from Atuabo to Tema, it's not unforeseen, was it? Because in 2017, your predecessor, Ejako, went to Parliament and said the reverse flow infrastructure will be completed by the end of second quarter this year. That was June. But you're behind time. So that clearly cannot be unforeseen.
No. As I speak now, we've completed the bypass.
Yeah, but you late, 5 months late.
It is not late. The bypass has been completed.
No, but
let me give you the conditions.
Ejako said to Parliament, and I'm quoting here, the energy minister was in Parliament because Ama Kofi had asked him a question, and it was clear that the reverse flow project is progressing steadily and will be completed by the end of the second quarter of 2018 as scheduled. That was June. It isn't complete as we speak.
As I speak, it's completed, but you cannot.
It was completed in June?
It's completed not in June, but after June.
Yes, but
you couldn't flow gas.
Okay.
We could not flow gas because there are condition precedents that needed.
Including tariff.
Number one, tariff. Number two, signing of the GTA, which is the gas transportation agreement, which can only be signed after the meeting of the ministers, of the 3-4 countries.
But I could disagree with you there. It's just according to the term sheet for the gas transportation agreement has been concluded and signed off between the Ghana National Petroleum Company and the WAPCO.
Yeah, but that is not the gas transportation agreement.
Okay.
The gas transportation agreement is to pave way for gas between the owners of the pipeline and those who want to transport gas through the pipeline to sign. That is quite different from this.
But what stopped us from signing the agreement?
Yeah, and so the WAPCO is the authority.
Yeah.
The pipeline was demanding for about 3.34 for transportation, $3.34, to transport gas through the pipeline. We, on the other side, government, we said $1. So this issue, because 3.34 is quite a huge amount of money if you have to allow that. So we negotiated on this issue, and finally, WAPCO, which is the authority, have come to say, okay, both parties, you will pay 1.172 thereabout for transportation. Okay, now the rules and the regulations such that when the WAPCO, which is the authority, fix the tariff, the committee of ministers will need to meet, to agree, because number one, there's Lome there, there's Benin, there's Ghana, and then there's Nigeria. So committee of ministers meeting, it's not done intermittently. Yeah. It's been fixed, fortunately, on 30th of this month. So the ministers are meeting 30th, which is Friday of this month, to sign, to agree, number one, to the WAPCO tariff, and then we proceed to sign, the GTA. Immediately the GTA is signed, then we can begin to transport gas from Takoradi to Tema. But that is a bypass. That can allow us to do about 60. While in the long term, we try to see.
But that
how
is
we
a
can,
bypass.
Yeah, well, we revamp
the reverse flow itself is not complete.
The reverse flow is not complete.
But that is the point I'm making.
So that is what I'm saying, that
you are significantly behind time from what you projected last year to finish the
the reverse flow.
The reverse flow itself.
The reverse flow is not completed at all. What we have done is to complete the bypass.
But isn't that a problem?
Well, that is a delay. That's a technical problem.
No, but
of course,
it's 5 months and you still not complete with the reverse flow.
The project is behind schedule. I can assure you.
But the president was confident in November last year that by June this will be done.
Yeah, but it's not completed because the project is behind schedule. It's not out of financial.
Whose fault is it?
Well, the contractor has been brought to the ministry. We had a meeting last week to explain the reasons for the delay. And
so he explained to you?
Yeah, they did come up with some reasons why they think that
you accepted the reasons?
Well, one of them, unfortunately, was the specifications of the pipe. They got to Nigeria, for which a pipe was approved. At the time of usage of the pipe, they realized that it doesn't fit the specification. Yeah. So we rejected that pipe. So they have to look for an alternative pipe. And that, of course, has prolonged the period. Yeah. Another reason was that they were going to bring the pylons, from one of the countries that they've mentioned, and that was going to take some time for the shipment. Yeah. What we tried to do is to shorten that duration, and so these are the reasons that have now prolonged, the completion period.
But
we are now putting the completion period. The last meeting we agree, we're putting the completion period in June.
Next year?
June next year.
Wow, that's a whole year.
That's almost a whole year.
You've overshot your own time by a whole year.
It's almost a whole year.
Your critics will say, we use the words you use against them, that is incompetent.
No, but again, you see, they should have put this car power plant, number one, from day one, attack ready, not to cause us all this trouble.
That was them. That's why we voted them out of power.
Well, but that is why the problem is existing. If they had from day one...
No, but that's not why the problem is existing.
Yeah, of course.
You said you finish in June.
No. But
you can't. You're giving yourself one more year.
Why do you have to start all this process? Why do you have to start all this process?
But they left you the blueprint to finish this.
Yeah, but the car power from the beginning, in my view, should be sited close to the source
That
of
is a fundamental problem.
And number one, that knowing very well gas is cheaper.
Yeah.
And then knowing when gas is coming on stream, because already we have Jubilee gas, in the West, we have 10 gas also there, and they know very well that OCTP gas was coming on stream because they signed the OCTP contract.
But I think
so they should be able to.
The fundamental question though is that we've moved on. That error was made.
I have agreed.
They dispute that it was an error, and that is why they said they put the blueprint to build the reverse flow to transport the gas, and you overshot your own. You missed your own.
The deadline has been made.
I'm just putting to you. Do you accept some responsibility at least that this is the outages that people suffered was you were partly to blame for the planning was partly to blame for
well, not about planning, but the fact is, the delay of this project, which of course is evident, the delay of this project couldn't have made gas available to Takoradi, to Tema. If this project was finished earlier, there will be gas available in Tema.
But if you finish in June, you would have a lot of gas in Tema.
That's the point I want to say.
And people at home will not have experienced the last 1 week.
So precisely, the project
So you agree that this is planning, lack of proper planning?
It's not lack of the planning was, what do you talk about planning? The planning was to analyze the system, to envisage what do you want to do with stranded gas. And that was done from number one and take a decision. They didn't take a decision. What decision did they take? We came and took this decision of relocation.
So for the people who suffered, because you cited this as one of your reasons, technical reasons.
Precisely.
And I'm saying to you from the evidence, based on Ajaku's own testimony to Parliament, and your admission that you cannot meet the deadline, you are going to overshoot it by a whole year, then at least you should admit to the people that.
No, that is why it's stated in here as part of the reason that inability to move gas from Takoradi to Tema, and then inability. It was as a result of the delay of completion of the project.
Which is your fault.
Well, the delay of the project cannot necessarily be our fault.
Why can't it be?
Well, why should I take the blame of a delay, or somebody takes the blame of a delay?
Who should? The contractor who is building it?
Well, but of course we are the client. The contractor, would have to shoot the blame.
No, but government employed a contractor.
Well, I agree with you.
And you went to Parliament. On what basis did you go to Parliament to say I'll finish by June?
Well, it was based on the estimation, but there are always project delays. But the point I want to raise
is a whole year delay.
Some of these projects are quite technical. Yeah. For instance, the pipeline that they're going to put in the shallow waters, you need some element of specification to be able to do those items, and that can take a number of months. Yeah. What they have done initially, which we estimate, was that they have undercut the duration project. You know, they do not envisage some of these unforeseen contingencies that I was talking about. They think that they can go to Nigeria and pick the pipelines that are available in Nigeria and then come down and start doing this construction. You know, some of the pressure pumps and other items that were necessary, which they thought that they could just have been available. It's later on been taught that these things are not there. So, well, lack of, you know, in-depth knowledge of some of this is also contributing to the delay, which of course I must admit. Yeah.
So when we take a short break, when we return, we'll talk about something that has come up also, which is in the midst of the challenges with finance, which we've heard is a big deal tonight. Isn't there a justification to review tariffs for ECG, for Gridco, for VRA, so at least they can make something back from you, they can put it back in and pay some of their debt, and so we won't have the challenge of struggling to raise the finance to feed the plants. We'll ask the minister's view on that, and then we'll go into long-term, though. What assurances can the minister give to you that we will not return to that dreaded word, doom? So what is the long-term plan to make this financial challenge a sustainable one that we are totally in control of? Stay with us here on PM Express. You are live on PM Express here on the JoyNews channel. We are streaming live on Facebook. We are also live on many social media platforms. I still have with me in the studio the Energy Minister, John Peter Amewu. He's given us an update on the power situation. He says wherever you are tonight, with the demand that they have currently, you shouldn't have a power outage. But if you do, it definitely has to do with a localized technical fault that you're dealing with. And he's gone through the many plants to show that indeed they are not even giving us full capacity. And anytime this increases tonight, peak demand falls in, they can't call for more power to supply you at home and your businesses if you're working as well. But one of the things he also told us tonight is the challenge with finance, and he's talked about how some of the all the power utilities have huge debts on their books. Mr. Amewu, so on that point, some have argued, including civil society groups like ASEP, have argued that in the light of the challenges that we have with finance and still trying to deal with the challenges on the books, maybe it's time to take a second look at the utility tariffs for these power utilities. It's time to review it. You agree?
Well, that's a good question. The regulator responsible for review would have to look at the merits and then demerits, and also the cost analysis. Tariffs are not reviewed for the fact that they are legacy debts. Tariffs are only reviewed when they are not meeting the minimum cost, obligations. So this decision would have to be carefully examined by PRC.
Is this something that you're open to do, a review of the tariffs?
If the regulator prescribed the need for review of tariff, of course, to be subjected to a lot of discussions, debates, and if it is possible, or if it can be done without putting burdens on Ghanaians. One thing you should accept, which is the fact that this current administration is so much concerned about the social activities of Ghanaians. We are basically a party that believes in the welfare of the society. We don't want to overburden, society, and that is a belief of this government.
However,
so if the government, for reasons, has been able to establish that the cost of tariff is of course competitive, and it meets the necessary cost obligations, of course, there will not be any justifications for increase. We cannot just increase tariff for the mere fact that there are legacy debts that need to be paid. Yeah. We increase tariffs based on cost scenarios. As on when your tariff is not cost reflective, then of course there's that justification.
But ECG can't pay its debts.
Yeah,
they need to raise money, and one of the key ways is through tariffs.
Yeah, but don't forget some of the debts overhang on ECG. It keeps paying them, like some of these governments.
But I just recently heard from Mr. Ware, your good friend at WAPCO. He says ECG owes them in excess of 200 million cedis that they can't pay them.
Yeah, and again,
so ECG will need the tariffs to pay.
So ECG also need to do a lot more of efficiency management.
I get you.
Okay,
I get
because
you.
the debts are
but
not
you need to meet them halfway.
Precisely. Government has been meeting ECG, as I stated. Government over the period has paid a lot of tariff increase is not the necessary way of addressing our debts in terms of clearing the debt. If you increase tariff and there's a huge amount of inefficiency still in the system, you keep on increasing tariff each and then. So we need to address that basic problem. The generation losses, the transmission losses, supply losses, and metering losses. There are a lot of losses along this system, power theft, you know, and see how the system, because if you put all these losses together in the range of about 23-25%, that is huge.
Okay.
That is huge. What it means is that those 25% are cost of this, you know.
Are you categorically ruling out any tariff reviews for the power utilities in the short to medium term?
Don't forget the generators are deriving, it's a derived demand. They have their source of generations from the feed, as I'm saying. So depending on the behavior of the feed and other factors that played into the generation, as and when those factors, you know, trigger an increase of tariff, of course, that would be justifiable for everybody to see that there will be an increase.
But in the interim, you don't see any
inefficiencies cannot be reasons for.
In the interim, you don't see any short to medium term increases in tariffs.
Today, tomorrow, I don't.
You don't see it.
Yeah.
The ESLA fund that helped clear the debt. Your opponents have accused the finance minister of taking 600 million cedis from the ESLA fund to pay pensions illegally. Is that true?
Well, unfortunately, I don't work at finance, so I will not be able to
but are you aware
say to that. But what I can show you clearly here, which I've demonstrated, for instance, VRA debts were cleared, you know, from 600 million down to 356 million, you know, to now nothing. Some of the extra bonds were used in clearing those debts. ECG, some of their debts, you know, tore some of their debt, bust, some of their debts were cleared. I don't have the right position in terms of the disbursement patterns of the ESLA. Finance to be in a position to do that.
And this is what some of our listeners sent us questions I had when they knew you were going to come. Prince says, he said we will endure some intermittent power supply for some time. How long should we endure this? How long will the intermittent cuts endure?
Intermittent in terms of technical emergencies.
Yes.
Again, it will be very difficult for me to establish. But as I stated earlier on, ECG on its own is doing what we call power intensification project. And some of this project is aimed at cutting down or minimizing this intermittent supply that we may witness as a result of technical
what we experienced the last 2 weeks, has it stopped?
What we experienced
in the last week that prompted your press conference, has it stopped?
Yes, of course, we have addressed that.
Okay, so that
again, you know, the reasons for that. There were coincidence of events. Yeah. For some unknown reason, there was a gas shortfall from Nigeria which was short. The ship that was bringing the crude, the heavy, you know, delays in delivery, the Jubilee FPSO trip off, the 10 FPSO trip off. And these things were done, you know, simultaneously.
All of them have been fixed.
All of them, I mean,
have been fixed.
They all have been fixed now.
So which
and this teaches a lot of lessons for the fact that the source of gas supply could cause a problem of flow of gas in the east, and gas from the west could also cause a problem of not having access of gas to the generators, and then fuel also being delayed. All this occurred, you know, at the same time. Mean as a country, you know, we need to look forward. What we want to do immediately means as a security of supply, we need to have, number one, our gas pipeline. And as at yesterday, I've given that directive that we need to start a new construction of a gas pipeline from the east to the west.
Okay.
Because we cannot depend.
Where's the east?
Yeah, from Tema to, you know,
western region.
From western region to.
Is it the same as the reverse flow?
That is different. The reverse flow. The reverse flow is using the existing pipeline. Which is for the 3 or 4 West African countries.
So we're going to be a whole new pipeline.
We need to have our own pipeline that we have control over.
Okay. That will transport what?
That will transport gas from Takoradi to Tema, and also to move gas from Tema to Takoradi. It's going to be.
That's a directive you've given.
Yes.
When are we starting that?
I think the board had met on it, you know, today, and they'll come out with the results. Because we need to start that. That is key. That gives us a lot of security of supply. I'm saying this because if you look at the 4 events that have occurred, this is the only way that we can prevent something like this happening again in the future. So this is why we started for a long-term solution, and that can, because we're going to have very soon a lot of gas coming up. From Sankofa, all of them will be coming up. So that can address it.
Finally, in 10 seconds, people who are still anxious about this because of all the accusations that Dumso is back, etc. What do you tell them?
Well, as a government and as an energy minister, I want to say very sorry to Ghanaians, especially those that have experienced this period of intermittent power supply. Of course, as a minister, I'm responsible. That is why I'm here. I take the blame. But I want to assure them that it was as a result of a number of events that have occurred, and this has nothing to do with financial issues. It has nothing to do with a planning system, but it's a mere coincidence of events that occurred as a result of contingencies that are unforeseen. And as a ministry, we put in measures, as I've stated earlier on, to make sure that we address this. Some people, during the period spoke, they lost their televisions as a result of this. Some of them got their TVs, and a lot of other things being damaged. Well, of course, again, we want to apologize for that and let them understand that this will never happen again.
Thank you very much. John Peter Amewu, Energy Minister. My name is Evans Mensah. Tomorrow, another edition. Next week, Monday, though, I have an edition of PM Express. Enjoy your evening.